Hey guys, thanks for joining me. I was going to do this outside actually. I like doing Shedlets in the outdoors, and it's warm enough now, but don't know if you can hear on the roof, it's pouring down. So here we are in a cozy little corner of the Holy Shed, and it's Ash Wednesday, of course, the beginning of Lent, the season in the church calendar forever associated with giving things up. Well, listen, this is how I see it. We have had almost a full year now of Lent, of giving stuff up. And to be perfectly honest with you, I've had just about enough of it, really. What I'd really like to give up for Lent is giving things up. I'd like to take some of them back. I'd like to take up a few things. I'd like to take up giving people real hugs. I'd like to take up having friends around for dinner. It's been so long. I'd like to take up mooching around bookshops and charity shops. I'd really love to take up going to TK Maxx and buy a few more nice little bits and pieces. I'd even, don't tell my wife this, but I'd even like to take up wandering around the supermarket with her, without a mask, of course. And I would definitely like to take up sitting leisurely in a pub with a pint of real ale and a good book. So there's the question. What are you going to take up for Lent? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm quite a big fan of Lent and a very big fan of Ash Wednesday, of ashing, actually. You know, that funny old ritual that makes everybody in the room look like they've joined a weird cult. And I know it may sound a bit strange, but one of the most privileged priestly activities that I engage in every year, not this year, sadly, is moving around a room, making the mark of the cross on people's foreheads, smudged in ash, and saying, in effect, "You're going to die." I mean, not quite as blunt as that. Remember you are dust, to dust you shall return. Remember you are dust, to dust you shall return. Remember you are dust, to dust you shall return. And I'll tell you why that's so important to me, because I think we live in a culture of denial that has lost its nerve, basically, for facing up to mortality. I mean, I know, having said that, that we've had almost a year of mortality shoved in our faces with daily statistics of people who've died of COVID-19, which must be one of the most haunting parts of this whole experience. But still, mortality is something that we're not really very good at, especially in the West. But you know, I believe that consistently failing to look mortality, to look death straight in the face, actually stops us from living as fully and as deeply as we otherwise could. A few years back, a woman called Bronnie Ware, who worked in palliative care, wrote a book based on her experience with people at the end of life. The book was called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, and it's a really fascinating book, which I would definitely recommend as an excellent meditation for Lent. And the top 5 regrets that she identifies, which she heard in one form or another from people through her work with them, are these things. One, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I'd stayed in touch with friends. I wish I'd let myself be happier. What an amazing final one that is. Wish I'd let myself be happier. In How to Be a Bad Christian, I included a chapter which was called Wakey Wakey, How to Make Sure You Live Before You Die, in which I talked about Jesus, like other great teachers, as being someone who called on people basically to wake up, to stop sleepwalking through life. I mean, that's how I see those stories in the Gospels. I see this wonderful man walking around Galilee, essentially setting off an alarm call, for people to wake up, to come more fully alive. And I would recommend that we see Lent that way, actually, to see Lent as a sort of annual wake up call, just as nature starts to wake up after the sleep of winter, as we're seeing right now. So we too can kind of rub our eyes and start to look again at what's important to us, what we're neglecting to do that we'll one day regret. I think that's all good stuff about Lent. I don't know if I've told you this story before in the shed, but hey, no matter. It's about Barry, a man who lived with extreme physical suffering for most of his life. I think he'd had a motorbike accident when he was 17 or something like that, which had left him basically in pain for the rest of his life. And now, in his mid 70s, he'd decided that enough was enough. So he booked an appointment at Dignitas in Switzerland where he could go and be assisted in ending his life. And at the request of his son, I went to visit him a few days before he left the country. Now, as you will already know, I'm an essentially upbeat person. Despite being a vicar, I don't find painful situations very easy to deal with. I can fake it okay, but inside, um, I struggle with painful situations. So, what would I say to him? I thought as I travelled on the train to his home. Well, I really needn't have worried because Barry just put me at ease from the moment I sat down in his presence. We chatted, laughed a lot, cried some. He dozed off a couple of times in mid sentence and then woke up and carried on where he'd left off, which made us both laugh some more, when he said, Did I just fall asleep then? Barry's son told me that his dad was a wise person, the sort of person who people visited for guidance. But now, he said, he's in need of some wisdom. And in those gaps when Barry dozed, I literally glowed on the inside at the privilege of being there with him, knowing that, as I did by then, that I was there absolutely every bit as much for what I was going to get from him as what he might get from me. Among other things, we swapped questions. He asked me, "What's the opposite of life, Dave?" And I said, sense that might be a trick question, Barry. He laughed and said, No tricks, Dave. There is no opposite to life. Life always continues in some form. We just need to entrust ourselves to it. What an amazing thing for a man at that point to be able to say. Life continues in some form. We just need to entrust ourselves to it. I asked Barry what the thing was he now treasured most. His reply amazed me. Having a life, he said, that I can look back on with a smile. I mean, how amazing for someone who'd suffered so much to be able to say that he had a life that he could look back on with a smile. And he assured me that it was relationships in his life that gave him the biggest smiles, knowing what it is to love and be loved. It's strange, really, that one of the most hopeful, happy friendships I ever forged was with a man I only met once, and that for a couple of hours, who was about to die. But somehow that encounter made me feel more fully alive, more appreciative of the incredible simple gifts of breath and days, loved ones. And you know what? That actually happened, as it goes, on a Shrove Tuesday. So what a way to begin Lent. Ashing is a reminder that life is short, that ultimately we do return to ash, earth to earth, ashes to ashes. So it's really important that we value each moment and live it as fully as possible, even if we're in a lockdown in the middle of a pandemic. It's important to live each moment. None of us, I think, much likes being reminded of death. But in fact, I think the conscious realization that life does have limits is an important way of valuing what a great gift life is. And here's the thing. I mean, you could say it's because I'm a reframing Enneagram Type 7, bunch of jargon. What that means is I'm the kind of person who avoids pain and negative crap, Well, of course, that probably is true. I do tend to reframe negative things to make them feel better. But the fact is, I've just never much liked giving things up when I'm enjoying them. I'm not a natural ascetic. All that self-flagellating, self-punishment stuff. Not for me, really. Uh, as much as anything, because I just don't see God as a sadist. I just don't see how that kind of stuff can please God. And then if it does, then I'm not sure how, well, I know I don't want to know that God. Anyway, here's my recommendation. Instead of seeing Lent as an exercise in self discipline, giving stuff up as some kind of act of obedience, why not see Lent as an opportunity to look after yourself? Maybe to be kind to your body by giving it a bit of a break from certain things. Or why not detox your mind from noxious self recrimination, worthless feelings of guilt? Why not have 6 weeks? That's the length of Lent. Why not have 6 weeks? Well, to start with, of befriending your body, of befriending your beaten up self image, of forgiving your own failures. Why not have 6 weeks to start with of looking in the mirror at least once a week and more if you can and saying, Dave, or whoever you are, you're a decent person. You want good things even when you don't always achieve them. In the name of God, chill. Well, I think that's enough for today, don't you? But we will be doing a few things for Lent in the shed, and I invite you to come on this journey with me. I'll say more on Sunday about that, but there will be weekly at least Shedlets in the midweek, of which this is the first. So why not now take a look at the top 5 regrets of the living? You can buy the book on Amazon, but if you go to Bronnie Ware, if you Google Bronnie Ware and 5 regrets, you can go to her website where you'll see those 5 things with a little bit more detail to them than I've been able to give you today. I really don't think it's a morbid thing, to remember that we're dust and to dust we shall return. No, I see it as a way of valuing what we have, of being grateful for every single moment, every precious breath, every beloved relationship, even those that continue beyond the grave, which I think they do. Ashing is a way of saying thank you that we are blessed to be part of the story of this planet Earth and its beautiful creatures. We are made of the dust of the earth. We're part of the story of people's lives, part of the story of tears and laughter, of love and loss and recovery, and there will be recovery. There will be recovery. It's Lent, but Easter's coming, and take that as a symbol of hope at this time. So thank you for being with me, and join me again on Sunday, if not before, and I wish you all the very, very best.